In this tutorial, we'll be creating this awesome leather jacket from scratch. We will learn cloth modeling and sculpting, realistic texturing, and texture painting. So this is the final result that you're going to be able to achieve by the end of this lecture. Alright, so let's get down to it. This tutorial is a part of a tutorial series that's going to teach you how to make this awesome motorcycle rig from scratch and make awesome animations with it. So you can join the channel membership to access more than 2,000 high quality Blender tutorials, so the link's gonna be down below. Alright, so the first thing that I'd like to do is to bring our reference. I'm gonna just slide this one sideways, and here on the bottom, I'm gonna click on this plus icon and drag up. After that, we can switch this into the image editor, F10, Shift F10. Alright, so here I'd like to drag the reference that we're gonna be using. This is the final result that you're gonna be able to achieve by the end of this lecture. Alright, so we got our jacket. Alright, so let's get down to it. First, I'd like to delete everything that we got in our scene. So select everything by pressing A, X, delete, and let's import our base mesh. So I'm gonna go to File, Import, and it's gonna be an OBJ file. I'm gonna find it in the resources. So click on it and double click on our character base mesh. So the next thing that I'd like to do is to scale our object to a real world scale. So it must be realistic. So I'm gonna press N, you can click on it again, jump into item, and you can see the height. So here it has 20 meters in height, which make no sense. So basically we need to reduce the size of our object. So on the edit mode, you can select everything by pressing A and try S, and let's scale it down. But actually I don't want to scale it from the middle. I'd like to scale it and keep the feet on the floor. So in order to do that, we need to put first cursor here. Otherwise you can try this, Shift S, put cursor to the world origin here, and we can switch the pivot point to the 3D cursor. So right now, if you try to scale our base mesh, it's going to be scaling from here. Alright, so I'm going to just scale it way down like this, I think even more, and let's check the scale. So now it's 3 meters high, so let's just scale it even down. Alright, so now 1.78, and now I think it's reasonable. We can scale it up just a little bit. Alright, so there we go. So the next thing that I'd like to do is to cut the upper part of our body. So select the base mesh on the edit mode, and we can press 1 to go to the front, press Alt A to deselect everything, press Z to switch to the wireframe because we need to also select the back side. I'm gonna press B to box select, and we can box select this area like this till we reach the hands. Here on the bottom of our jacket, I'm gonna press B again, and we can cover more of that, something like that. After that, I'd like to switch to the face mode, and we can check this out. I'm gonna press period to zoom on it. So here on this hand, so as you can see, we're missing some details. So I'm gonna press Alt Shift to deselect these 2 rows. Okay, you can switch again to the solid to check that out. Yeah, I think we need to include this part also. So Alt Shift and click on this edge loop. Alright, so let's jump on the other hand and let's check it out. So Alt Shift, and basically we got that selected. Alright, so now for the neck, we need to work on it even more. So what I'd like to do is to add these edge loops. I'd like to reach this position, so we can press Alt, Shift, and keep inserting those. Don't mind these additional parts, we're gonna just delete them. Alright, so here I'm gonna just delete Shift, press C, and let's just deselect these extra stuff. Same thing here for the color, we don't need it. I'm gonna just press C and deselect this section that we got here. Alright, after that we're going to be making it a V shape. Alright, so here for the head, press C, deselect these additional parts. Same thing on the back. Also we can press Z, switch to the wireframe, press C again, and let's deselect all these additional faces that we don't need. Same thing here on the bottom. So let's press 1 to switch to the front, press C and Shift, and let's deselect these additional faces. Alright, so now all we have to do is to just duplicate this upper part of our body. So Shift D to duplicate it, and we can press P, separate, so that we can have it as a separate object. So now what I think to do is to just delete our base mesh. I'm gonna just select it and press H to hide it. So now let's start working on our jacket. Alright, so now let's start sculpting our jacket. First, what I'd like to do is to add the multi-resolution modifier. So let's go to the modifier, select first our object. Here I would like to call it, you can double click, let's call it jacket. Alright, so let's jump into the modifiers and let's add the multi-resolution so that we can sculpt. For example, if you are sculpting on this area, it's gonna increase the resolution that we got on that area. So I'm gonna just subdivide so that we can increase the sculpt level to 1. And I'd like to jump into the sculpting tab, this one. Click on it. And now we can start sculpting. First, what I'd like to do is to smooth out the nipples. So we need to remove those kind of things that makes our jacket looks like a human. So select here the smooth. I'd like to reduce the strength of it, reduce it to something like 0.4, 0.3. You can press F to scale up the brush like this, and we can smooth this area. Okay, that's nice. Same thing here, and basically that's it. So we got the smooth. All right, so now we need to start working on details, on the cloth details. So I'd like to bring here our reference. Let's do the same. I'm gonna just split my bottom scene, switch it to the image editor, and from here we can choose our jacket. All right, so let's start working on the details. So first I'd like to jump into the cloth brush, this one. So click on it, and for the strength, I'm gonna just keep it at 0.5. Let's just check this out. I'm gonna try to take this, try to go up like this. You can see that's a little bit messed up. Control Z. Let's go back. Let's just reduce the strength to 0.2 to 0.15. Let's try to go up like this. You can see that effect. It looks pretty much good. So basically we're brushing toward the joints of our body. So toward the shoulder like this. You can simply take up and do the same thing for the full arm. Like this. And now you can see that effect of our that cloth effect. It looks really nice. This brush is really useful when creating a cloth. So if you are trying to create these wrinkles by hand, it's gonna take ages. So luckily we have the brush tool. Same thing here, for example, on the back, I'm gonna just drag sideways like this. On the bottom, I'm gonna take up. So just like if you are doing a massage to our body, take it up. So what we need to do is we must not forget any area. So just take your time with the cloth brush and always make sure to brush toward the body joints so that we can have those nice realistic wrinkles. So now for the front. So we have the chest. So let me just zoom on a little bit. You can start by taking this down. And again, you can reverse that effect. You can take it up. All right, that's really nice. Same thing here on the side. Here I'd like to work under the chest to kind of give it a nice definition. Also make sure to not miss any spot. We must apply the cloth brush to every area in our jacket. Alright, so there we go. We got an excellent sculpting start with our jacket. Alright, so now I'd like to fix the color. I'd like to extrude it a little bit up and work on it a little bit. So let's do that. So we need to make it look like this. Alright, so I'm going to just go back into the layout so that we can jump on the modeling. So on the edit mode, I would like to jump on the edge mode. We can press Alt to select the entire loop. And actually I'm not inserted in the entire loop. I'm going to press C and Shift and deselect this part. So this is just color. So I'm going to press EZ to go up, something like that. After that, I'm going to press, need to make it look like this. So here I would like to switch our pivot point from the 3D cursor back to the medium point. Alright, so I'm going to press SZ and press 0 so that you can have it flat. Alright, after that we can spin it a little bit. So RX, spin it sideways like that. Alright, so that's an excellent start. After that, I'd like to add additional details, additional loops, so it must be like this. So let's insert, for example, let's go with 7 loops. So press click and press enter. Alright, so we're good to go right now. After that, what I'd like to do is to make the front wide a little bit. So I'm gonna select these 2 points and we can activate the proportion editor. I'd like to switch to the sharp, the mode of it. And we can do this, so SX, but we need to decrease the mouse, scroll the mouse down, something like that. Okay, we can move it a little bit forward, down a little bit, SX, scroll even more, awesome. So next I'd like to fix the V shape, so it must be looking like a V shape actually, this part here. So on the edit mode, so I'm going to be selecting this point here and I'm going to simply drag it down. Let me just scroll a little bit the mouse. No, actually this is not the way to do it. So I'm going to just jump into the sculpting and I'm going to smooth the edges. So you can use here the smooth and you can click here to smooth this part. And let's do the same thing here. Let's smooth this other part. Alright, so now it starts to resemble to a V shape. Pretty nice. Alright, so now I'd like to add the stitches all around our jacket. So these stitches here, they're going to be defining our jacket and they will be making it looks even more good and realistic. So to do that, I'm gonna be using this crease tool. So let me just click on it and try to brush with it. So you can see the effect that's given us right here. So make sure that you are increasing the strength to 1 so that you can see this effect. But here, as you can see, the resolution is kind of low. So what we need to do is to go back into our multi-res modifier, and we need to subdivide it one more time. So let's subdivide it. So the sculpt is set to 2 right now. So if we try to sculpt now, gonna see much better details. You can go ahead with 3. Let's go with 3. Yeah, I'm gonna just subdivide it one more time. So 3. Alright, so let's test it out. Now it looks pretty much smooth, the edges of our stitch. So what we need to do is this. I would like to add the stabilized stroke so that we can, let me just show you. So here we have the stroke. We can check the stabilized stroke. For the settings, I'm gonna just keep it at default. So check this out. So when you try to brush, you're gonna have that red line. So it's gonna help you with, keep you in balance, because it's gonna be really challenging to do that just by hand. So what I'd like to do is to reduce. I'm gonna just Control Z to go back, and we can press F to scale down the size of brush, and let's start brushing. All right, there we go. So now as you can see, we're having some interesting stitches going over there. So let's continue our turn all the way to the bottom. Same thing for the top. Let's continue our turn just like that, a little bit on the bottom. Excellent. So let's do the same thing on the other shoulder and continue brushing those stitches around our shoulders. So to make this gap a little bit smaller, we're going to be using another brush. It's called the pinch tool, this one. So let me just click on it, and we can scale it up a little bit. So we can start brushing here. As you can see, it starts to make that gap a little bit smaller. And it's going to be really useful, because as you know, stitches doesn't need to be that huge. So I'm going to just go ahead and try to make that gap as small as possible. So basically we're collapsing the geometry over there. Alright, so let's go back to the crease tool, and I'd like to add additional stitches around our color. So I'm gonna press F to scale down the brush size, and let's go like this. So we can continue our turn. So let's just continue like this. So feel free to revert back by pressing Ctrl Z and try to fix it even better. So here I think we need to go a little bit down like this. I'd like also to go for the V shape on the other side too, and same thing here on the middle. So we need to add that stitch that's going to be replaced later on with the zipper. You can just click here at the middle and drag all the way to the bottom like this. Also, I'd like to add additional stitches that's going to connect the shoulder with the collar. So let's add them right here. Also here, I'd like to show you an interesting thing that we can do. So we can use the symmetrical aspect here. You can check here the X. Let me check which axis we are working on. I'm going to go back to my layout. So this axis here, the X axis. So if you are drawing something here, you're going to see it on the right side. So let's go back to the sculpting and let's check the X mirror. So you can see that point. You can see the point on the other side. So I'm going to just sculpt from here all the way to the color, just like that. We can add additional loop. Interesting. Here on the bottom of our jacket, I don't like this shape, so it looks a little bit bad. So what we need to do is to smooth it out. I'm going to jump into the smooth tool. You can increase it up by pressing F. Let's increase that brush size. And here we don't need the symmetrical. I'm going to just click on it to remove it, and we can smooth the bottom. I'd like to increase the strength to 1, and let's continue smoothing that bottom part. Alright, so now what I'd like to do is to add some stitches on the back. So as you can see, the back is not defined at all. I'd like to add some design. So I'm going to press 1, actually Control 1 to jump on the back, and let's add some interesting shape here. I'm going to just go back into my crease brush, and we can try this Control Space to maximize this window here so that you can see it better. And I'd like to do this. I'd like to go to this line like that. So I'm going to press F to scale down the brush size, and let's take it from here all the way to the other side. Okay, same thing here on the bottom. Let's add this interesting design like that. So here we're going to change the color of the back to something else. So feel free to add additional stitches all over your jacket. So for example, I'm going to be adding it on the bottom here to cover the bottom of our jacket, and also on the hands. So the last thing that I like to do is to add some details on the front. As you can see here, we're having 2 colors of the leather. We have the black and we have the orange or yellow. So what I'd like to do is to add this line that we got here, this stitches line. We can add it real quick right now. So it's going to start, for example, from the bottom of our shoulder here. and it's gonna go all the way to the bottom. So here, we need to make it symmetrical. So I'm gonna be enabling the symmetrical on the X mirror, and let's do that. I'm gonna take it from here. You can go sideways, and after that go down all the way to the bottom. All right, here we can fix this missing part. I'm gonna press F to increase the size of our brush, and let's brush this missing area. We can also use the pinch tool to kind of bring it together. So let's press F to increase that size. You can try to bring this part together a little bit. Alright, so let's go ahead right now and create the zipper that we got in the middle of our jacket. So we need to put it over here. So I would like to jump first into the layout, and let's start with a simple cube. So Shift A, as you can see, I'm putting the cursor at the origin. So otherwise you can do this, Shift S, cursor to the board origin. Shift A, let's start with the mesh and cube. After that, I'd like to scale my cube. So on the edit mode, we can scale it on the Z like this. Also, let's remove the proportion editor for now, and SY. So we need to create this kind of a shape. So after that, I'd like to insert some edge loops. So the first edge loop must be on the middle. So Control R, we can press enter. And here on the second part of our cube, I'd like to insert double edge loops. So we can try Control R here and scroll your mouse twice. Alright, so you can press enter double times, and basically we got it. So next, what I'd like to do is to jump into the edge mode, and I want you to select this edge loop. So you can press Alt to select the entire edge loop and these two edges. So press Shift and select these two side edges. After that, I would like to do this. So SY, and let's scale our object down like this. So this is the initial shape of our zipper. On the edit mode, maybe we need to scale it down a little bit, something like that. And in order to make it look interesting, I'd like to add the bevel. So on the edit mode, we can select everything and try Control B to bevel it like this. But before doing that, I want you to check the item. So you can check the transformation here, transform. So the scale must be set to 1, 1, and 1. Otherwise, the geometry won't gonna be good. So if it's not the case in your case, so you can do this, Control A, and apply the scale. Alright, so now on the edit mode, let's select everything and try Control B to bevel that. We can insert one single edge loop like that. Alright, excellent. Right click, shade smooth. So this is our first unit of our zipper. Alright, so now I'd like to duplicate this unit multiple times. So to do that, I'm gonna be adding a modifier. So we can go here to the modifier icon, this wrench icon, and we can add the array. So basically the duplication must go on the y-axis. So that's why I'm gonna set here the y to 1 and x to just 0. So you can also increase the y a little bit up, so for example 1.5, and let's increase the count to something like 50, just as a starting position. So the next thing to do is to create the second half of our zipper. So I'm gonna just use the move tool so that you can move this. So Shift D to duplicate this object, you can move it sideways, SX and -1. You can press 7 to go to the top, and let's work on it a little bit. I'm gonna just take it up here and move it on the inside. Take it up a little bit like that. And basically that's it. So now as you can see, we have our zipper. Also for this second object, I don't want to keep the scale as -1, so we can try Control A and let's apply the scale. Alright, so now I'd like to add a curve so that we can change the shape of our zipper without deforming its geometry. So let's do that. So Shift A, and let's add go to curve, and I'm going to be using a path. So I'd like to spin it on the y-axis. So on the edit mode, you can select everything, RZ, and type 90 degree. All right, after that, I'd like to scale it a little bit up. You can scale it like that. And we can take it up to cover our zipper. After that, I'm going to be selecting the left side of our zipper, and let's add the curve modifier. So on the modifiers, I'm going to be adding the curve. So I'm going to just minimize the array and just focus on the curve. So here the curve object. So this one that we just created. So I'm going to just click on it and use the NURB path. So for this deform axis, so since we are working on the y-axis, it must be on the y. But here, as you can see, it's flipped. So we need to spin it by 90 degree. Or we can do something else. We can change the deform axis to -y. Alright, so now I'd like to go to the top. You can press 7, and I would like to place this left side of the zipper on the top of that curve. So sometimes these axis works in a different way. So as you can see, I'm trying to move it up and it's going down. So you can just reverse the process, take it up, take it down. It's going to be moving up. So I'd like to show you this. So if we select our curve, jump on the edit mode, and if we select, for example, this vertex and try to play with it, you can see that we're deforming the shape of our zipper. Alright, so what I'd like to do right now is to move. I'm going to be selecting both of these elements and let's place them on the top of our jacket. So first we need to scale them way down and let's move them here. I'm going to press period, press 1 to switch to the front. Let's press RX and let's make it standing. So I'm going to spin it by 90 degrees. Alright, so I'm going to just move it down here and S to scale it way down. Let's go ahead with scaling and let's put it at the starting position of our jacket. So I think the zipper size looks huge. So we can scale it way down like this and we can increase that array number. So let me just select this object and we can go back to the array and we can increase this count to something like 110. Alright, so let's just take it up. I'm going to select both of these objects. Let's take them up like this. Probably we need to scale them down a little bit. Move them down here to the side. Press period to zoom on it and let's snap it with the front like that. So here, like I said, you must notice something. So our jacket looks low geometry. So the reason why it's looking like that is because of this. We can go back to the multi-res. So you can check the level viewport. So we're setting it to just 1. So you can just increase it to 3. So now it's in high definition. Alright, so I'm going to be selecting my curve, jump on the edit mode. And the goal here is to do this. Let me just move it down here. So this is the starting position. So you can scale it up. So the curve must fit our jacket. Let me just press 1 to go to the side. Yeah, it's looking right now good. You can slide this one sideways here, move it down. So this is gonna be the end. So this is gonna be the starting point and the top is the end. So let me just select the zipper and let's take it up. So here for the count, I think 110 looks a little bit too much. So we can just end right here. So I'm gonna just set it to 100. Let's check that out. It must be moved down. So GZ here. So I'm gonna just decrease that count to something like 95 or even 94. All right, so the next step is to make the curve follow the same shape that we got on our jacket. So to do that, I'm gonna jump on the edit mode, select everything, and let's go to segments, subdivide. So we need to have more details on our curve. So you can subdivide 3 times like this. And after that, what we need to do is to start snapping our curve. We can just press period here, take this one to the side like this. So that's the starting position. You can take it down and we can continue this way. But also I want you to move these to the right side. And you can continue like this until you finish snapping the zipper to the jacket. So once you finish working on the left side, I want you to do this. I want you to select the curve, shift select the zipper, and we can duplicate it. So shift D can duplicate it. And actually, what I like to do is to just select again the curve. And on the edit mode, I'm going to be selecting the top, only the top vertices. Try SX and -1. And I'd like to move them sideways here. But here we're having an issue. So we need to flip the right zipper into the other side. So we need to invert it. So to do that, I'm going to be selecting the right zipper on the edit mode. Let me just find it. This one, you can press period to zoom on it. And I'd like to do this. So SX and -1 so that you can flip it on the other side. All right, so if we pay close attention, so now it's going to be flipped. So all we need to do right now is to just move it up a little bit. So I'm going to try GZ, also GX to go sideways. All right, so the last object to create is the zipper lock that's going to be located over here. So let's go ahead and create it. But before doing that, I'd like to bring a reference to check upon it. So let me just bring the zipper reference and let's take a look at our lock. So I'm going to start with the cube. So Shift A, mesh, cube, and I'd like to scale it to fit this shape. So I'm going to just scale it on the Z axis and scale it on the X like that. And on the edit mode, I would like to select these 2 edges and SX, scale them down. We can select everything, scale X, make it wide just a tiny bit. After that, I'd like to select all of these edges, the side edges, Control B to bevel it. But before doing that, I want to check again the scale. So let's apply the scale, Control A, let's apply the scale. And on the edit mode, I'd like to bevel these edges, the side edges, something like that. After that, I'd like to select the top. We can select this edge, for example, Shift D, duplicate it. Let's move it here. We can do this, EY, extrude it like that, all the way to the top. And I'd like to select this object. You can take it up, for example, here. Extrude it down and Control R. Insert 2 edge loops, SY, take them all the way to the edge. And we can grab the bottom faces, extrude them down like this. All right, so we got the initial shape of our lock. Now I want to add this object that we got here, the handler, this object. All right, so to do that, I'm gonna be selecting again this face, Shift D, duplicate, can move it backward here. I'm gonna try to scale it up, scale on the y-axis, move it down like this, and I'm gonna select the bottom edge, scale it a little bit up, make it wide, and after that, let's select this face. We can, for example, move it down here, and I would like to insert an edge loop. You can move the first edge loop over there, second edge loop right at the middle, and after that, we can jump into the face mode, select the first face, press I to insert some insets like this. Same thing here on the middle, on the bottom. So let's insert the second inset, and we can just select these two faces, X, delete them. After that, I'd like to select this bottom unit by pressing L. I'm gonna try to extrude it up, so let's press E and let's go all the way to the top, something like that. Also, I'd like to tweak a little bit the middle so we can grab the inside. So press Alt here. We can press again E and right click, S, Shift Z, can scale it down like this. And here I'd like to insert, for example, two edge loops, and I'd like to take these up. So let's select these two edges, take them up a little bit like that. And after that, I'd like to select all of these edges that we got here, and we can move them backward. Excellent. After that, we can select all the top faces, Alt, like that. We can press E, extrude them up a little bit, just so that we can create some interesting shape. All right, so I'm gonna just roll with this. So now for the corners, I'd like to bevel them a little bit, so we can press Alt here, Shift Alt to select all these corners. All right, and we can try this, Control B, and bevel them a little bit, so there is no need to keep them sharp. But also here on the middle, I'm gonna insert two edge loops, so Control R, let's insert double edge loops. You can jump into the face mode, Alt to select the entire row. You can SZ, scale it a little bit up, and after that we can do this. We can press E to extrude it, right click, S, Shift Z, and scale it on the inside. All right, so now let's bevel these corners. I'd like to work on them a little bit, so press Alt, you can also select the bottom, all these edges, Control B. Let's bevel them like that, right click, shade smooth. Alright, so our last move is to move this object and place it at the right place here. So I'm gonna put cursor here, so shift and right click to put the cursor over there. And we can do this. Select our object, RX, you can spin it by a 90 degree, or probably a little bit like this. And let's scale it way down. So on the edit mode, select everything, and let's try to scale it. So type S and 0.1. So you can scale it to 1/10 of its size, and even down, so S again by 0.1. Alright, so after that, what I'd like to do is to set, go to object, set origin, and origin to the geometry, and we can do this. So Shift S and choose selection to cursor. So now if you press period, you can have that object right there. So you might try, let me try to play a little bit with it, put it over there. Awesome. Alright, so now it's time to start texturing our jacket. So I'm gonna be using this leather jacket texture. I'm gonna be using it to texture our jacket. Alright, so the first thing I'd like to do is to jump here on the bottom window. I'm gonna just expand it a little bit up, and we need to switch it to the shader editor here. So with our jacket selected, we can jump here into the material properties, and we can check. So by default, we have this default material. I'm gonna just call it leather. So if you don't have this material, you can just click here on this plus icon and you can add a new material. Alright, so here on the shader editor, we have the principal BSDF connected to the material output. So I'm going to press N to maximize this. So what I'd like to do is to bring that leather texture here. So we can simply drag it and drop it here in the shader editor. After that, I'd like to connect the color to the base color. So now if we want to see the texture applied to our jacket, we need to do this. We need to press Z and switch to the material preview. Alright, so now our jacket has the same color of the leather texture, but it has no detail. So this is because of the bad UV mapping. So we need to UV map our jacket even better. So let's select our jacket, jump on the edit mode. Let's select everything. I'm gonna press U and let's choose the Smart UV project. Alright, let's click on OK. So if we exit the edit mode, you're gonna be able to see the leather material. So what we need to do right now is to scale it up. So we must increase the size of our leather. So to do that, I would like to add two nodes to our leather texture. So Shift A, let's add the mapping node. You can just search for that. And Shift A again, and let's add texture coordinates. Alright, so I'm going to be connecting to the UVs to the vector. and the vector to this leather vector. So here on the bottom we have access to the scale. So I'm gonna just select both the X and Y and let's set the scale to, for example, 10. Can press enter. Now as you can see, the leather is pretty much small and it looks reasonable. So now we need to start working on the other details. So far you can see that our leather looks flat, looks like a paper. So what we need to do is to add the bumps. So let's do that. I'm gonna be pressing here Shift A and let's add a bump node. Let's put it over here. I would like to connect, I can just drag these 3 nodes backward, and I would like to connect the color to the height and the normal to the normal. So now it's bumpy, so we need to reduce this bump. So I'm gonna just reduce the strength of our bump to something like 0.1, just 1/10 of it. So probably we need to increase it a little bit up, so let's set it to 1.2. Nice. Let's work now on the roughness. So we need to make our material a little bit reflective. Alright, so let's scroll back and let's add the color ramp. So Shift A, let's add the color ramp node. And I would like to connect the color to the factor on the bottom of the color ramp and the color to the roughness. Alright, so as you can see, it's glossy, but we need to reduce that glossiness. So I'm going to just take the white handle and drag it all the way to the left side. We can also take the black handle, move it a little bit forward. So we're having some nice details going here. We might want to invert these 2 nodes, these 2 handles, keep them like that. Now it looks pretty much good. So it looks like a real leather. So here I'd like to bring our reference to keep an eye on it, the jacket thumbnail. So our next step is to add the black leather and apply it to the top of our jacket. So right now we have one color, which is this brown leather. So to add the black leather, I'm going to be selecting our jacket, and here let's add a new material. So we are in the material properties, this one, so we can add a new material, and I'd like to select the leather again. But here I'd like to duplicate this material. So we can click on this icon here to create a new duplicate of our material. And for example, we can call it leather dash black. Alright, so here on the shader editor, I'd like to start working on it. So Shift A, let's add another color ramp, and I'd like to put it on the base color. So on this line. So now our second leather is going to be black. So we can test this out. I'm gonna jump on the edit mode, but as you can see, we lost the sculpting detail. So what we need to do right now is to apply this multi-res resolution, multi-res modifier. So we can do that from here. So go to this icon and click on apply. Alright, so now the multi-resolution is applied. We can jump on the edit mode. As you can see, it's gonna be crazy high in details, but that's fine. We can bake it later on. So Alt A to deselect everything, press C, and we can start selecting the bottom part like this. We need to be following that line. We can press 1 to go to the front and keep operating on it. Also here I'd like to press Ctrl Space to maximize this window, and let's continue. I think we must be switching, so let me press Z, switch to the solid mode, so now it's gonna be better. So we can just continue all the way to the bottom. After that we can just select everything we got on the side like this. Same thing on the top. Let's make sure to cover everything. Let's continue our selection. Alright, here on the side I'm gonna be selecting everything down like that. After that, what I'd like to do is to press 3 to jump on the side. We can press Z to jump on the wireframe. We can zoom on a little bit to check. So I'd like to start to cut the middle part. So I'm gonna press B, Shift, and I'll just deselect this section like this. Alright, so press Z, switch again to the solid, and let's check that line. It looks pretty much good. So you might want to add this edge here. So the right side looks fine. So Control Space, let's go back to our shader editor, and we can apply here this black leather. So you can do assign. So let's press Z, switch to the material preview, and let's check this out. So as you can see, it looks gray. So what we need to do is to play a little bit with this color ramp. So I'm gonna just move it here. So as you can see now, it starts to resemble, start to be black. Also, I'd like to reduce a little bit that black color. I don't want it to be 100% black. So something like this is gonna be reasonable. But if you check our reference, so basically we need to invert those colors. So there is an easy way to do that. So for example, let's select the first leather. I'm gonna click here and let's choose the black leather. And for the bottom leather, let's switch it to the first leather. Alright, so now it's looking pretty much good. So all we have to do right now is to work on the left side. So I'm gonna press Z, switch to the solid, and let's start this selection process. I'm gonna press 1 jump on the front, control space, and let's zoom on a little bit. Press Alt A to deselect everything. Press C, and let's start our selection all the way to the top. Alright, so we got the left side selected. Also, I'd like to deselect the other parts that we don't want to have them included. So I'm gonna press C and increase the brush, and Shift and deselect these. Same thing here on the top. Alright, so we need to do a quick investigation. Good. So here let's jump again on the side by pressing 3, B, box select this area. Alright, so let's jump again into the solid, and I think it looks pretty much good. So let's press C, Shift, and deselect this additional part. Alright, so control space, let's go back and let's select the brown leather and let's assign it to this part. So Z, switch to the material preview, and as you can see, we got it applied. Alright, so now I'd like to texture our zipper, so we need to make it a little bit shiny, just like this. So let's select our zipper, and we can create a new material from here. Let's call it zipper material. So here for the principal PSDF, so I'm gonna just tweak a little bit the roughness. Let's make it low to something like 0.1. And for the color, so the base color, I'd like to make it a little bit dark. Alright, so let's check it out. So it's reflective and it looks nice. I think there is no need to make it dark gray. Let's take it up like that. And also I'd like to increase the metallic number, the value that we got here. Let's increase it to 1. Something like 0.8. Let me check it. It looks reflective. Let's select the other side and we can click here on the material. So we are on the material properties. Can click here and choose again the zipper. And basically we need to do the same thing for our lock. So let's add the zipper material. Alright, so basically we got the leather texture applied to our jacket. Alright, so our next step is going to be to add stitches to our jacket to make it look even more interesting and more realistic. So you can see the difference here between our model that we got so far and this one. This one, it has the stitches. The stitches add much more details to our jacket. It makes it look real. Alright, so let's get down to it. First, what I like to do is to bring the texture brush that we're going to be using, the stitch brush. So I'm going to go here to File and let's append. So I'm going to be appending this Blender scene that you're going to find it in the resource. So double click on it and all we need is just a texture, one texture. So double click on the texture and I would like to be using this C double stitches. So double click on it. Alright, so now before we start texturing or brushing our stitches, we need to do something. So basically I'm going to be selecting the black leather material, so this one. So here's the deal, we need to create a new image texture, so that's going to contain the stitches. So I'm going to be doing it here for the first material. So Shift A, let me just expand my window here, so Control Space. So Shift A, I'm going to be adding an image texture. So I'm going to click on New and let's set the width to 4K. I'm going to just multiply it by 4. Same thing on the height, I'm going to multiply it by 4. Alright, for the name, let's call it stitches. Let's press OK. So after that, what I like to do is to connect our stitches image texture to the base color. So I'm going to just go ahead and connect it like this. Alright, so let's do the same thing for the other materials. Control Space and let's select the brown leather and we can just do this. So Shift A, search for image texture, and we're going to be using the same image texture. So I'm going to just click on this library over here and I'm going to be choosing this stitches. So what I like to do is to connect it straight to the base color. So it's going to overwrite our texture here. Alright, so now I'd like to jump into the texture paint and I would like to start texturing our stitches. So I'd like to take this one to the side like this so that we can maximize our work. I'm going to press N and I'd like to jump into tools. So I'm going to scroll a little bit down here into the texture and let me click and we can choose from here the C double stitches, the texture that we imported. For the mapping, I would like to switch it to the view plane and I want you to check this rack. So here on the bottom, I would like to enable the stroke so we can check the stroke here and let's check the stabilize stroke. So the same thing we did before with the sculpting. So we need this tool to kind of help us with sculpting those stitches. So I'm going to start brushing with our stitches. So we got our stitches, but you can see this problem. So it's just one line. So actually what we need to do is to add some space between our stitches. So right now they are all connected. So we can go here to this spacing and I'm going to increase the spacing to, for example, 20. All right, I'm going to just Control Z to go back to remove that and let's start brushing again. So now you can see that. So we have some gap. So let's increase this one, for example, to 40%. Control Z here, and let's try again. All right, so I think that's too much. So I'm gonna just go with 30%. Pretty nice. So we got our stitches, but they don't look that strong. So what we need to do is to increase the brush strength to 5. Let's try to brush again, and as you can see now, it looks pretty much good. All right, so let's start brushing with our stitches brush. So control space, let's go to the top. I'm gonna press 7 to go to the top, shift and right click. So here we can start brushing between the collar and the shoulder. We can just continue this line all the way to the end like this. And let's repeat the same thing for the second line. All right, let's continue all the way to the end. All right, so we can take a look at it from the top. It looks pretty much good. So here, let's finish these lines. So I'm gonna press F to scale down the brush. Let's try to check it. Actually, we need to scale it up. So we can press F, scale it up a little bit. And let's continue this turn. Like that, same thing here on the top. Can F, scale it down a little bit. Okay, let's take it all the way to the color of our jacket. So for the shoulders, let's start working on the shoulders. I'm gonna start from here. Let's continue our turn. All right, same thing here. Let's continue. Here for the back, let's connect this side to this side. Same thing here on the bottom. Restart again and take it all the way to the right side. So here, let's continue our turn on the front of our shoulder. I'd like to take it all the way to the bottom of the shoulder, just like this. All right, so let's do the same thing we did with the right shoulder to the left shoulder. So basically, I'm gonna be adding the 2 lines that's gonna connect the shoulder with the color of our jacket, and let's work on the shoulders. So we need to complete that turn, also work on the bottom. You can always revert back and rewrite those stitches. So we need to work here on the bottom of our shoulder. Let's not forget this area, even though it's kind of tricky. All right, so basically that's it. So we got the shoulders well set with the stitches, and it looks fabulous. All right, so let's continue working on this section that we got here. Let me just start from the bottom. Press F to scale down the size of the brush, and let me start from here and go all the way to the top. So let's do the same thing on the other side. Alright, so after you finish adding the stitches, so we need to go back into, let me just control space here. Let's go back into our layout and let's tweak our shader editor. So we need to bring back those 2 colors that we got. So here we have the stitches. We are on the black leather. I'm going to try control space. So basically what you need to do is to mix between our color, the color of our leather, and the stitches. So shift A, let's add a mix RGB. I'm going to put it on this line. So the top is for the stitches and the bottom is for the color ramp. All right, so control space, let's go back and let's check this out. All right, so it's visible, which is good. So let's do the same thing for the brown leather. So control space, let's add the mix RGB. So shift A and let's search for mix RGB. I'm gonna just put it on top of this line and let's connect this leather to the color number 2. So I'm using this leather here. So let's connect it straight to the color number 2. So control space, let's go back and let's check our stitches. For the black leather, I'd like to switch it to the multiply. Let's just take a look at it. I like it, it looks much more defined. Alright, so our jacket right now has stitches on it. So what I'd like to do as a last move is to make these stitches bumpy. So control space, let's go back. Gonna try again here, control space to maximize this window. So actually what we need to do is this. We need to combine our stitches texture with the leather texture before connecting them to the bump so that we can have them both bumpy. So shift A, let's add again a mix RGB. Gonna just put it on the bottom. Let me just move or disconnect the bump. So we're gonna be connecting 2 nodes to this mix RGB. First we have our leather. So we need to have the bumps of our leather. And also we need to have the bumps from our stitches. So I'm gonna just connect this color all the way to the bottom color. And after that, I'm gonna connect the color to the height. So control space, let's just go back and take a look at it. All right, I can see, no, it's barely visible, the bumps here. So I'm gonna try to increase the strength up, but as you can see here, when you increase the strength of our bumps, so we're also doing that, we're also increasing it for the leather. So actually what I'd like to do is to tweak a little bit this node here. So before connecting it to the color number 1, Shift A, and let's add another color ramp. I'm gonna just put it on top of this line. Let me just explain again. So it's connected between the leather and the first or the second mix. Let me just take this one back. Actually, just move it on the bottom. So we're connecting the stitches to the bottom and the leather to the top. So here we added this color ramp. So what I'd like to do is to make it a little bit subtle. So I'm gonna select the black and let's make it a little bit white. So the more we make this handle white, the less bumps we will have in the leather material. So we can tweak this value here. I'd like to set it to 0.995, or even we can make it 0.998 to make it really subtle, those bumps of the leather. So now for these stitches, they have this bumps. So I think here we went too far with this number. So let's just set it to 995. Something like that. And also for the bumps, you can reduce it down to something like 0.4. And basically that's it. This is our final jacket. So it's modeled, sculpted, textured, and ready to be used in our project. This tutorial is a part of a tutorial series that's gonna teach you how to make this awesome motorcycle rig from scratch and make awesome animations with it. So you can join the channel membership to access more than 2,000 high quality Blender tutorials. So the link's gonna be down below.